Welcome to Seattle Hall Pass, a podcast with news and conversations about Seattle Public Schools. This week, we're reporting on the September 27th school board meeting. My name is Christy Robertson.
And I'm Jane Tung-Stamel.
What was initially on the agenda for this meeting ended up taking a backseat to the community coming together in support of trans kids.
There were 5 anti-trans activists who signed up for public comment, and word got out about this and spread all throughout the Seattle Public Schools community.
And people came out of the woodwork. And about, was it less than 24 hours?
Yeah, to make it clear to the anti-trans activists that Seattle Public Schools supports trans students. To kick off the meeting, Director Hampson read a proclamation in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, and Superintendent Jones also recognized Latinx Heritage Month. Jones mentioned that he talked to Seattle legislators about the budget.
We had the opportunity to talk with our Seattle legislative delegation this week about our current situation, primarily about budget. We're trying to capitalize on the good work that we did in the last session. But more importantly, we want to build a shared understanding of our vision for SPS and what it'll take to realize that vision. And so we are thankful that we have our legislative delegation solidly with us, and we're going to continue to progress to provide the adequate and solid resources for Seattle Public Schools.
I don't know if they've done that before, but I have heard from legislators that they would like to be much more in communication with the leaders of Seattle schools and the board. I hope they just put that as an annual repeating task on their calendars.
Ayush Muthuswamy, the student board director who was there, also mentioned coordinating on legislative priorities.
Something we as student board members have just started working on is bringing student voice into the SPS legislative agenda. I had a great conversation with Director Rankin yesterday, and in partnership with her, we're hoping to meet with student leaders across the district and work together to craft legislative agenda that reflects their short and long-term needs. 2 of my personal priorities in the legislative agenda are incorporating more curriculum related to harm reduction into the health education learning standards, and also expanding funding for free school meals for all students, because in no world is it acceptable to have hungry students in our schools.
So then people launched into supportive comments to the community. I was not in the room. Were you there?
No, I wasn't.
But it was clear from watching the live stream that the room was full of trans supporters. The 5 people who came to testify about, quote, trans indoctrination, end quote. So there were 5 of them. They sat in the front right next to each other. And then every other seat in the house was people countering the message.
And also there was about 100 people watching the live stream, and usually it's about maybe 5. Before the public comment, the directors and the superintendent said some words directed towards the trans students to show their support.
Here's Ayush Muthuswamy, the student board director.
That love for each other is the only way forward, that hate has no place in this district, and that we will not accept as a school board and as a school district anything less than a welcoming and safe environment for every single student in this district.
And here's what Superintendent Jones said.
I need to be emphatic that as part of our safe and welcoming schools, we want to reaffirm our commitment to creating inclusive, identity-safe environments for every student. The rights and safety of our LGBTQ plus youth are a priority for this district. Let there be no doubt. This district stands for inclusion and belonging in policy and in practice, and representation matters.
Director Rankin said a few words that were clearly directed at the anti-trans activists. Here's what she said.
Student civil rights are non-negotiable in our public schools by state and federal law. In Seattle, we also have board-adopted policy that clearly states the values of our community in support of all of our students and their rights to public education and to being fully included members of our community. Discrimination on the basis of race, sexual orientation, gender identity, ethnicity, disability, religion is not acceptable and is prohibited by federal law. All students are entitled to a public education that includes identity-affirming curriculum. By state and federal law, and by board policies including 0010, instructional philosophy, and 3211 Gender Inclusive Schools, which was adopted by this board under the leadership of a queer Native board president, we support the civil rights of our students, their rights to exist, be included, be safe, and to learn and thrive. To our trans, non-binary, and LGBTQIA plus students, you will hear comments during this meeting from people who don't know you and are nonetheless directing hate towards you. I want to state clearly that we up here, whether or not we know you, love you, and support your rights in Seattle Public Schools, and will continue to fight for them.
Director Zachary DeWolf, his main effort
When he was a board director in 2021 was the Gender Inclusive Schools board policy that Vice President Rankin was referring to.
Director Hampson read it in its entirety, and we can link to her reading it and the actual resolution.
And Lisa Love, who's the manager of health education for Seattle Public Schools, spoke about what they've done in response to the resolution. They recently added K-5 gender book kits to every school, and all schools have pride flags to hang for Pride Month, thanks to a grant that they wrote. They also participate in the Pride Parade every year. And she also mentioned a new course that came out of the resolution, but she didn't give any details. So if any of you know what that is, please email us. We'd love to hear more. And then the public comment began. Before it started, Greg Narver, the general counsel for Seattle Public Schools, went over the rules of public comment and set up expectations.
Board Policy 1430 recognizes the critical role of public comment to help the board, to support the board in its oversight and decision-making and policy-making roles. So to everyone here who is here to help the board with those comments, welcome. I do want to stress that what is said at this podium is protected to the full extent by the First Amendment. There's a lot you can say, and you may hear things tonight with which you disagree, strongly disagree. And you may hear things that call into disagreement the board's own policies or board-approved curriculum. You may hear things that are even offensive. Generally, all of that is protected by the First Amendment. With that, though, welcome to everyone who's here to speak, and we look forward to the kind of vigorous debate that the First Amendment is all about. Thank you.
We're not going to feature any of the audio clips from the anti-trans activists because we don't want to broadcast their point of view, but it's publicly available. One of them had grandkids at Seattle schools. Another one had served on Ingram and Nathan Hale High School PTAs. And the other three, I don't know what connections, if any, they had to Seattle schools.
We will list the names of the commenters in our show notes, and we will also link to their testimony on YouTube. So if you want to watch it, you can watch it for yourself. And after those 5 anti-trans activists spoke, then we had the onslaught of parents coming out to speak on behalf of their trans students.
One of these was Amy Freeman, who is a parent and public interest attorney. And she talked about her experience when her student wanted to change their name. Here's what she said.
So I looked up the policy, and let me tell you, I was thrilled. This policy is awesome. It covers everything. It's nuanced. It tells parents what happens when legal names have to be used in very certain situations. And it tells staff that you should do something when you do have to use the legal name to keep it undercover and not call the kid out. This is a nuanced policy, and I'm thankful for whoever wrote it.
She also had a message for the anti-trans commenters.
I also want to say no teacher has ever told my kid they were born in the wrong body or that they needed surgery or what their pronouns were or what their name was. My kid told me themselves who they were long before they set foot in Seattle Public Schools.
There were several students who testified, and it's especially impactful to hear from the voice of a young student.
My name is Ian Fogg, and I'm a student in Seattle Public Schools. My mom showed me the list of testifiers today, and she asked me if I wanted to speak up. I do. I have friends who identify in different ways, and they all need to be in school. I feel my education is better when the other students who are with me in class feel safe and welcome. The world outside of school is beyond our control, and there are deeply problematic things happening. inside the schools on our school property during our school activities, students should be safe to be who they truly are so that they can work.
And here's Ian's younger brother, Jacob Frog, from later on in the testimony.
And we know some people are mean to kids because of little kids, and that is not okay. It makes it hard to learn when people are mean.
A student named Adrian shared their experience.
Here's a thing that you don't know about your trans kids. They are stronger, braver, and more stubborn than you think they are. Confidentiality has been a trans rights topic recently. I want to speak to those parents opposed. Exploration is normal. When you demand that students be outed to families when they try out names and pronouns at school, you are giving them an all or nothing option. Many kids will choose nothing and go through something hard alone. Kids deserve the chance to try out things among their peers. If they do get that support, they are more likely to share themselves with you as a choice.
After the meeting, we heard from some people that they so appreciated all the people who came out to support them that night, but they also want the Seattle Public School community to know that there's so much work that's still to be done, that every single day there are still trans students or queer students in our schools, and they're facing bigotry and microaggressions from their peers. There is one teacher, Makina Gadiant, who touched on this difficult dynamic. She began her comments with a few affirming words. Here's what she said.
And there are so many more people that couldn't be here today that wanted to be here that found out at 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning. And so this is just a fraction of the love and support that our community has for our LGBTQ two-spirit individuals in Seattle.
And then she reminded us all that trans students still face difficulties because of their identities every day in our school buildings. Here's how she explained it.
But I think that it's important to be here and to show up and to stand up and to say that you are important and you deserve a safe space and you deserve curriculum that teaches other students not to be assholes to you. I hope that doesn't break our civility, but I have seen students come in being misogynistic and being full of the patriarchy, and because of our curriculum, because of the stories that we tell, because of the love that is in our school, they leave a better person, and they leave a better person to other people. So it is not just about our LGBTQIA students having a safe place. It's about making our other students see that they are important and they are valued.
Another parent, Astrid Gillen, also spoke of the difficulties trans students face at school.
Even in spite of the beautifully inclusive policies that we have in this district on paper, my trans child still struggles to access the full range of academic and extracurricular activities at school because of bigotry among students as well as adults in their school. It is essential that if your student shares a classroom or a hallway or an auditorium with mine, that they understand how to respect their pronouns and treat them as a human being.
Debbie Carlson, who's running for school board on a platform related to having a queer family, also talked about there being more work that needs to be done.
According to SBS 2021 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 65% of trans youth reported engaging in self-harm in the last 12 months. 65% reported depressive feelings, and 20%, 1 out of 5 of trans youth attempted suicide. These numbers represent Seattle trans youth. They also show that our trans students do not feel safe in Seattle, and that Seattle Public Schools must do more to provide a safe and welcoming learning environment for them. Currently, within the district's strategic plan, as well as the goals and guardrails, there isn't a single mention of LGBTQIA students or their families. Let that sink in. LGBTQIA plus students aren't centered anywhere in the district's 5-year strategic plan or in the new governance structure called Student Outcome Focused Governance. This needs to change.
And for me, the most striking comment was from an SPS staff member who felt they had to be anonymous to protect their own safety, and had a colleague read their letter out loud to the board. And here's what the letter said.
When I was growing up as a student in public schools, I was not taught a single thing about transgender people. When it came to the existence of trans identity, I was educated in an atmosphere of silence and denial. This invisibility and hostility led me to suppress my identity for many years at an enormous mental and emotional cost. Big surprise, even without learning a single thing about trans people in schools or at home, I still turned out trans. I was as a child and I am as an adult. Any educated person knows that exposure to ideas reflecting a diverse society does not make a person gay or trans, but visibility and affirming curriculum saves lives. Our goal is not for cisgender children to become transgender children, but for transgender children to become adults. Our trans staff are also terrified for our personal safety. We did not ask for our identities to turn into a hot button issue that gets manipulated for conservative political clout. Please, SPS, be unapologetic in your support of us. We are literally dying out here. And again, this is a letter written anonymously by a trans staff member at SPS. Thank you.
Student Board Director Luna Crone-Verone was the last speaker for testimony, and we're going to play a long section from her clip.
I am a Seattle School Board of Directors student member. I am also openly trans and proud, and the first openly trans person to ever serve on the Seattle Public Schools Board of Directors, and that is a fact that I am proud of and grateful for. I first of all want to say thank you to the incredible amount of support pouring in since this morning, the incredible community that has showed up here, our incredible school board who affirms trans students every day and will continue. And I know that this is a commitment, and I will continue to push for this commitment to continue to affirm, uplift, support, and most of all, celebrate trans and LGBTQ students in our district from now until forever. One thing I want to say to those in the room, if they are still in the room, who do not believe in my existence, who try to villainize my body and the bodies of trans people, to try to villainize us as children and the adults who support us and save our lives. I want to say, I wish you love. I wish you more love in your life. I wish you a more loving way of viewing the world, because the incredible thing about being a young trans person and the trans community that amazes me every day and inspires me every day is that no matter how hated we are, no matter how much hatred we face, how much discrimination, how much violence, we remain such a loving community who our identities are built on love, open love for ourselves and our truths and our community. And I feel love, and I can hear and feel the love in the room today. So I wish you who want to deny us our existence, want to deny us our fundamental rights, I wish you more love. I also want to thank Lisa Love, who has supported me, defended me, fought for me every step of the way as a trans kid through Seattle Public Schools, because it has been a hard process. It has been difficult, and I wish and I hope and I will make the commitment that I will continue fighting for all the trans kids who come after me in Seattle Public Schools to make their experience less hard than mine. And I want to send the message to every trans kid hearing this right now, every student in the room, that teacher who left that incredible message anonymously, that I love you and I'm here with you and I'm in pain with you. And I hope we can all find a more loving way forward together, no matter how complicated that may be. And I hope that those who wish to deny us our existence will most of all find that love in their lives and in the ways they lead themselves in the world. Thank you.
This is one of the longer testimony sessions. And as the board changes its structural framework, there are pieces that are not naturally in there that don't connect directly to student outcomes focused governance. And clearly, it was a really important session for the board, for the administrators, for the students, for the teachers. And yet, you could easily say, well, this isn't focused on student outcomes because we're not measuring outcomes.
Yeah, the board monitors how many minutes they talk about student outcomes. And in this case, obviously, they would get 0 minutes. What I thought was amazing was to see all the different stakeholders in Seattle Public Schools coming together. Because so often I feel like the teachers versus the admin versus the parents versus the students are pitted against each other. It was great to show that really we all have the same goals and the same values for the most part, and that we can come together and be really strong. And at the end of the public testimony, President Hersey told a story about when he was a teacher, and here's what he said.
A lot of y'all know that I was a teacher for a number of years. And one of my favorite months, surprise, surprise, is Black History Month. And during Black History Month, we read this book about Ruby Bridges. Y'all know who Ruby Bridges is? Of course you do. And I just remember this conversation. It was my first or second year teaching. This little girl, we're reading the book. And in this picture, there's that iconic photo of Ruby Bridges being escorted into school. Mobs of people who didn't want people that looked like me and our superintendent to go to school. Now look at us. But one of the things she said really stuck with me. She said, man, they came all that way just to hate on that little girl? Yeah, they did. Do you think, and then she asked me, is Ruby Bridges still alive? I was like, yeah, she is. And I was like, wow, are those people still alive? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I wonder if they feel any different now.
The last piece of the meeting was a work session
to see the work that the ad hoc policy manual committee has been doing. And just to be clear, the student outcomes focused governance framework suggests that you stop having continuous committees, but that you can have ad hoc committees to perform specific tasks. And so that's what the policy review committee is.
Yeah, and this committee is made up of Vice President Rankin, Director Rivera-Smith, and Director Sarju. And the committee charter is to develop recommendations for a restructured policy manual that is informed by best practices, conforms with legal requirements, and enables the board to review policies on a regular basis. The state of things as they are now is that the school board just has, I think it's got to be hundreds or 100 policies.
There are about 240 board policies, and altogether there are 417 board policies and procedures at the moment. You can see them on the Seattle School Board Policies and Procedures webpage.
And once policies are made, they just kind of languish there in perpetuity.
And here's what Director Hampson said about that.
The bulk of the series that make up the policy manual haven't been touched for like a decade. So that's what we're trying to get away from is like we can't have policies. We're not in compliance with the vast majority of our policies. Yeah. And so this is to try to get us to being in compliance with the vast majority of our policies by us focusing on what we can manage.
In actuality, Ellie Wilson-Jones, who is the main staff person that supports the board, her actual title is Director of Policy and Board Relations. And I was recently told that it's her job in the ideal situation to keep track of all the policies and have them on this schedule of review and make sure that what is in them is communicated to the superintendent and that whatever reporting needs to be done to make sure they're followed is done.
And actually what they were working on at this meeting was the first committee deliverable, which is to develop a policy evaluation tool. And here's how Ellie Wilson-Jones explained the tool.
It's a pretty simple document in terms of what it is seeking to cover, the magic in how it is utilized. But the tool builds on some of the recommended practices for how One would engage in a policy manual review, and that would be looking at goals, guardrails, governing, and delegation as your 4 main categories.
So I think this kind of ties into what we were talking about the other week with gotcha governance, that they want to avoid something like the labor issue where they're supposed to be updated on what's happening in labor negotiations. But since they never check on that policy, someone took the job who didn't even know that was part of her work.
Although that might be one of the policies that they end up delegating, and so that they don't review it every year. So
Correct.
I wonder what will happen.
Yeah, that's a good question. How will the ones that get delegated, how will they make sure that those are getting checked in on the regular schedule?
There was a great question from Director Song, which was, wait, why are we doing this again? And Vice President Rankin answered her question, and you can also hear Director Harris chime in too.
I'm still fuzzy. So after you've evaluated these on whatever scale you land on, then what do we do?
Then you give a little binder.
So is the idea that anything that is a 0, we just cut? Or
No.
So that's
No.
what I'm wondering about the scale. Oh, we're not monitoring.
No, we are, but it's not part of our, well, we're not even doing that part right now. Right now, we're just trying to use the tool to evaluate what do we have.
And then Director Hampson further explained.
I was just going to say, this is all about creating focus.
Yes.
That's what this is doing, is just, where is our focus? What policies do we need to retain as part of our focus?
It seemed like they're doing this whole process that's very, very time consuming, and I'm not sure how much it's getting them to where they want to be with student outcomes.
The good thing about the standing committees was there was a rhythm to them. They had been in place for so long that there was just a rhythm of things that came through. The ad hoc committees, just by virtue of being ad hoc, they have to make up their own structure. And both the ad hoc policy committee and the community engagement committee suffer from a bit of just aimlessness and difficulty in efficiently getting things done.
And Ellie Wilson-Jones wrapped it up nicely. Here's what she said.
So the committee is developing the tool. They're going to run a bunch of policies through it, kind of check what their findings are, and make some recommendations back to the board about, policies could be structured in this way, and you would review these policies with this frequency, these ones with this frequency, or maybe some of these policies become more operational documents for the districts, whereas these are sort of core governance policies. So those pieces, the committee just hasn't gotten to yet.
And that concludes this episode.
And if you're the sort of person who made it this far, then we want to hear from you. Email us at hello@seattlehallpass.org.
We'd love to interview you if you're part of the Seattle school community or have anything that you would like to contribute. Our show notes are available at seattlehallpass.org. You should definitely check them out.
And you can subscribe at all the usual places, and you can also support our podcast by donating.
I'm Christy Robertson.
And I'm Jane Tung-Stamel. We'll be back with more episodes soon, and we hope you'll join us next time on Seattle Hall Pass.